You are not a tourist in time. You are a witness. And what you're about to remember may never leave you again. It is England, the year 1528. The streets of Oxford are still slick with morning rain. You breathe in the scent of damp stone, and something else beneath it metallic, sharp, like blood already dried. From the open window of a tavern, you hear laughter. From the alley behind it, you hear a thud. A man who was laughing an hour ago lies motionless in the mud, eyes wide, shirt soaked, body steaming with sweat. No wound, no warning. And by nightfall, 2 more will fall beside him. You are the notary. You carry the names. You do not know what this Eisenly that no prayer has stopped it, and no physician has understood it. And as the church bell tolls without pattern, you know this time is not like the others. You were there. You still remember. If what you're about to witness brings you not just knowledge, but quiet unease, or a silence that echoes longer than words, consider subscribing to this channel, not for numbers, but so we can continue unearthing the forgotten, the misremembered, and the buried. And if this story lingers with you, in the stillness before sleep, or the quiet between thoughts, then a like, a share, or a moment of reflection will mean more than you know. You are in the heart of Tudor England. The year is 1528. Henry VIII sits upon the throne. Not yet divorced, not yet excommunicated, but already restless. The country holds its breath between reform and rebellion. The monasteries hum with quiet tension. Merchants grow rich, peasants grow hungry. And in the cities London, Oxford, Bristol's cobbled lanes are wet with summer, the air thick with the scent of sweat, ale, and anticipation. But something else arrives this summer. Not from God, not from France, but from nowhere at all. They call it the sweat, or more formally, Tudor Anglicus, the English sweating sickness. It kills faster than plague. It shows no rash, no buboes, only heat, only panic, only sweat. It comes like lightning and strikes without mercy. Strong men collapse in hours. Noblemen and beggars alike fall, soaked and shivering, onto floors that grow slick with death. Some say it is the judgment of God. Some whisper, it is punishment for heresy. Others wonder if it's just the smell of modern life finally turning in on itself. You are a clerk in a college town, Oxford. You write the names of the dead before the ink runs dry. You seal letters in wax while your hands tremble. And when someone coughs behind you, you stop breathing. This is not the first time England has felt the sweat. It struck before, in 1485, just as Henry VII took the crown. Again in 1508, then 1517. Each time it vanished as mysteriously as it came. But 1528, this will be the worst. It starts with one man, a traveller. He arrives in Dorset, coughing, burning, trembling. By the time he reaches London, he's gone, and the streets are lined with more like him. Within weeks, over 40, 0 people in London alone will feel the sweat run down their backs. And pray it's just the heat. Doctors try to treat it with vinegar, with bleeding, with prayer. Nothing works. People flee the cities. The court itself moves to avoid the pestilence. Even the king disappears, hiding in the countryside writing letters, begging for updates. And you stay, because someone must write it down. This was no ordinary plague. It targeted the young, the strong, the healthy. It chose its victims like a storm chooses trees. And when it left nothing behind but fear, silence, and the smell of stale sweat. Why it came, why it left, and whether it will return, no one knew then. No one knows now. But the summer of 1528 changed England forever. And you who walked its streets, who watched the strong fall and the ink blur, you never forgot. You remember the first time you noticed something was wrong. Not a scream, not a body, but a silence. A strange, tight silence that hung in the air above Oxford that July morning, as though even the wind had been warned. It began, as plagues often do, with a traveller, A cloth merchant, they said, from the west. No one remembered his name, only that he arrived flushed and soaked in sweat, asking for a bed. By the next morning, he was dead. No wounds, no blood. Just a cold, drenched corpse, jaw clenched in something between fear and exhaustion. You are a junior clerk in the hall of Corpus Christi, a small college nestled between walls that once promised to keep the world out. You copy names into parchment registers, students, tutors, stewards. You write slowly, methodically. But lately your quill has hesitated more often. Your hand trembles not from illness, but from what you've begun to suspect. By the third day, 3 others have died. 2 porters and a kitchen boy, all young, all previously healthy, all gone in less than 12 hours. There is no pattern, no swellings, no blackened limbs, no visible sign of plague, just a rapid onset of fever, a sudden drenching sweat and then collapse. You listen to the physicians. They argue in Latin in the halls, muttering of humours and vapours. One insists it is caused by bad air miasma. Another suggests it is divine punishment for the country's flirtation with Lutheran heresy. A third quietly blames the French. But no one has answers. The dead keep growing. Within the week, the bells of St. Mary's ring not for prayer, but for the passing. So frequent are the tolls, they lose their meaning. You begin to dream of bells, not in mourning but in warning. At night, you hear them when they are not ringing. Markets begin to close. Servants begin to vanish. Horses are found wandering with no riders. Scholars leave for the countryside under the pretense of study, but you know what they flee. The town crier stops announcing deaths by name. You remember the moment it touched your college. A tutor master Godfrey collapses during midday meal. One moment he is laughing, quoting Seneca. The next, he is gasping, gripping his stomach, his tunic soaked through as though he had stood in the rain. You see steam rising off his chest as others scatter, shouting. He dies within the hour. No one touches his body. It remains on the floor until dusk. After that, lectures are cancelled, windows are shuttered, meals are left outside doors, and those who still stay within the college speak in hushed tones, if at all. You continue to write. In your ledger now appear notes you never expected. Deceased. Fell ill. Transferred to unknown location. Each one a name you once greeted. Now, a name to be crossed out. Rumours ripple through the town faster than the illness. That the disease can smell fear. That you must not fall asleep once the sweat begins. That if you confess your sins before the second hour, you may survive. Some men lock themselves in their homes with barrels of dried food and prayer books. Others walk shirtless into the river, seeking to wash it off before it finds them. Neither survive. There is no cure. Physicians try everything. Cold compresses, vinegar baths, leeches, dried herbs tied beneath the arms. But most of the afflicted are dead before remedies can be applied. More curious still is who is spared. The elderly, the infirm, the children, many survive untouched. But the healthy, the strong? It is as if the sweat chooses its prey for their very vigour. In London, the king has fled. Henry VIII, terrified of contagion, has moved his court to the countryside. He writes daily to his physicians, demanding news. You read one of the letters passed from hand to hand. It ends with a single line. Let none approach me who hath not sweat already. The irony does not escape you. By late July, the city feels hollow. The cobbled streets, once noisy with students and merchants, are now hushed, like a monastery without monks. The only movement is the flicker of candlelight behind shutters, and the slow, deliberate steps of those who bury the dead. You begin to wonder if you too are already marked. You avoid meat. You wash your hands in vinegar. You sleep with the windows open, and you pray, though you do not know to whom. Then comes the worst night. It is warm oppressively so. A strange heat clings to the walls, and you find your linen shirt soaked with sweat, though you have not moved. You sit up, heart racing. Your mind races faster. You light a candle. Check your pulse. Steady for now. Your skin feels hot, but that could be panic. Your thoughts spiral. Have you been touched by it? You look down at your own hands, and they are shaking. You make a choice. If death is to come tonight, you will at least not meet it in fear. You begin to write. Not the names of the dead, not the inventory of linen, but this, what you have seen, what you have heard, what no one will believe when the fever breaks. You write of the first man, of Master Godfrey, of the streets, of the bells, of the silence. And when the candle burns out and your eyelids fall, you do not know whether you are sweating from fear or fever. But morning comes. You are still here. You open the window and let in the breeze. It carries with it the scent of rosemary and something else, something sharp. Below, two men carry a body toward the chapel. You do not recognize the face, but you recognize the posture. Knees drawn, arms folded, eyes open. Another one. You pick up your quill and write. You are alone more often now. Not by choice, though you could claim it was. You haven't fled, like the others. You haven't packed parchment and coin to hide in the hills. Instead, you remain behind these walls, high, ivy, covered, once built for scholars, now holding only echoes. You walk the same stone corridors each day, barefoot now. Your shoes began to squeak with the sweat of fear, and you could no longer bear the sound. The porter's bench at the gate lies overturned. The dining hall smells of dust and spoiled barley, and the chapel, once the heart of your daily rhythm, is locked not by key, but by absence. No one came to pray. So, one day, you stopped opening the doors. It has been 2 weeks since the first shiver, and Corpus Christi is no longer a college. It is a waiting room. You light a candle at each hour, not for the dead, but to remind yourself you are still alive. Wax pools over your fingers as you carry them down the halls. Each drop burns like a tiny truth. You are still here. You eat bread, grown stale, apples dried and soft, water drawn at dawn, when the air still feels cool, before the sun begins its daily suffocation. And every evening, you write. No longer just names. You have filled 3 full ledgers now, not with names of the living, but with what they left behind. A broken lute string, a half-filled prayer scroll, the smell of almond oil on a neckerchief. They are gone, and yet they remain. The silence is a kind of chorus. From time to time you open the gate, just a crack. Sometimes a bird flies in. Once, a boy no older than 12 stood outside, asking for his brother. He had walked from Abingdon. You asked him for the name. He said nothing, just stared past you into the courtyard. Then he turned and left. You never saw him again. The college cat still roams, though thinner now. She doesn't meow, she only watches. From windowsills, from rooftops. She knows more than she tells. Letters pile under the door of the bursar's office sealed in wax, bearing names of nobility and clergy. You have not opened them. You don't know if anyone ever will. Some mornings you hear singing. Not from within, but drifting over the walls, faint and high. You cannot tell if it's a child or a woman. The notes bend and linger in the fog, then vanish. You write it down. Your fingers are ink-stained. The quill has become a limb. You write, because it is the only way to know the world is still moving. The act of writing itself becomes sacred like prayer, but with no God to answer. You begin recording dreams. In one, you are walking through the chapel, but all the pews are turned backward. In another, you are climbing the bell tower, and there is no Bellenlear pit. You do not fall. You simply stand at the edge until the dream ends. And then one day he returns. The steward, William. He had left early, on the 6th day, taking a cart of salt and barley, saying he would trade for herbs. No one expected to see him again. But now, at dusk, he stands in the yard, holding a pouch and a lantern. His beard is longer, his eyes wider. You do not run to greet him. You wait. He speaks slowly. The roads are empty. Oxford is half abandoned. The bishop has closed St. Aldate's. 2 of the almshouses are burning. He heard coughing in the woods near Banbury. No one is burying the dead in Whitney anymore, just dragging them to the river. He brought valerian root and mint, and a small jar of what he calls clean air resin from a tree near Reading. It smells like winter. You let him stay. There are rooms no too many. That night, you speak of nothing but the stars. William asks what you've written. You show him. He reads in silence, 1 page at a time, lips slightly parted. You watch his expression shift confusion, sorrow, something close to reverence. "This will outlast us," he says, closing the final page. You shake your head. Only if someone lives to read it. He doesn't argue. Later by the fire, he asks if you've heard from Cambridge. You haven't. You ask if he passed through London. He looks into the flames. It's quieter than here. In the days that follow, the college does not fill, but it breathes. Two more return. One gardener, one scholar. They do not ask for food. They ask for ink. You give it freely. Together, you begin a new ledger not of the dead, but of the vanished. You list what is known: name, date of departure, known destination, last seen. You leave a blank space beside each entry. Not for a death date, but for a return. The choir stalls are dusty, but William sweeps them daily. Sometimes he hums while he works. You do not recognize the tune. The cat gives birth to 3 kittens beneath the altar table. You take this as a sign, not of hope, of time. Time is still moving. Therefore, so must you. You write, and the ink never runs out. Not yet. There are no more bells in Oxford. The great towers that once sang the hours now hang silent, their ropes untouched. You haven't heard them in Weeksonley, the wind moving through their hollow throats like breath through a dying man. But within these quiet halls, you have become the bell. You mark each passing with ink, each vanishing with words, each life with memory. You are no longer a scholar, you are a collector. Not of relics or truths, but of remnants, the last traces of those who once walked these cloisters. You begin to walk the city each third day. Always alone, always before dawn. It is not safe, but nothing is, and the silence is softest before sunrise. You bring with you a cloth satchel and a wax tablet. In Magdalen Lane, you find a child's wooden whistle lying beneath a doorstep. In Holywell, a torn page of a psalter, smeared with soot but still legible. Deliver me, O Lord, from mine enemies. On the banks of the Cherwell, a single glove, too fine for a labourer, too small for a man. You do not question why these things are there. You simply carry them home. You place each artifact in a row within the old library, now repurposed. It is no longer a place of study, it is a reliquary. Each item receives a number, and beside each a slip of parchment. You write, "Found, 13 July before dawn. Near the door of St. Mary's, no signs of struggle. Scent of lavender present in fabric, possibly belonged to child aged 6-8. You record these things not because you believe they will be claimed, but because, if memory is a kind of resurrection, then this is your calling. Others begin to do the same. William brings a bootlace, found snagged in a garden gate. The gardener returns with a hair comb, missing teeth but still fragrant with oil. The scholar, whose name you learn is Eleanor, finds a sealed letter on a cart near the city wall. The seal is broken, the page inside blank. They do not speak while placing these things on the shelves. It becomes a ritualsolent, slow, sacred. One evening, Eleanor leaves a loaf of bread on the altar in the dining hall, not as food, as offering. You begin to suspect none of you are doing this for the living anymore. This is for the vanished, and for the silence they left behind. You find your dreams thickening. One night, you walk into the cloister and see each object glowing faintly, as if lit from within. In another, the shelves stretch into endless corridors, and each item whispers its owner's name. You wake weeping, not from fear but from gratitude. Even your grief has company now. You discover a book, misfiled in the scriptorium, titled De Mortalitate, on mortality, written after a plague long forgotten, in the time of Cyprian. Its Latin is rough, but one passage repeats, Nulla mor sola est, quisquis perit, secum alios trahit. No death is alone. Whoever dies pulls others with him. You write it on the wall in charcoal. Below it, you add, and yet we remain. Therefore we remember. The days blur, but the ledgers grow. You now have 4. Each page holds fragments, names, dates, objects, scents, songs, half remembered. You begin including drawings. You sketch the comb, the glove, a brooch with blue enamel found near Carfax. Your fingers stiffen from the ink. Eleanor teaches you to stretch them at dawn, warming them over steam. You find, at the back of the oldest ledger, a note you do not remember writing. Each life leaves a residue. The collector's task is not to cleanse but to witness. You do not cross it out. The city beyond the walls changes. More houses are boarded, more fields left unplanted. And then, one morning rain. Real rain. Heavy. Cleansing. You all stand beneath it, unhooded. The cat and her kittens huddle under the eaves. The water pours down the stones, carries dust from corners you forgot. It does not wash away the memory. It only softens it. William says nothing, but he leaves a vial on the library desk the next day rainwater. You label it. 24 July. Rain after 21 dry days. All present stood beneath it. The city feels quieter, but less afraid. You wonder if this is what healing begins to feel like. Not loud, not final, just quieter. You continue collecting, but now you find you are also noticing the present again. You record the laughter of Eleanor when she knocks over ink, the sound of William's boots on the wet stair, the way the light returns to the chapel at dusk. You realize memory is not just about what was lost. It is also about what remains. And that perhaps is enough. For now, the sickness did not leave with ceremony. There were no final bells, no proclamations, no divine winds to sweep it out. It simply stopped arriving. One day, you realize the ledgers have no new entries. The reliquary shelves are full, but untouched. The ink pots remain half-used, the pages blank for longer stretches. At first, you suspect a lull, a trick. But then come the signal, undeniable. The city crows return. The air no longer smells of ash and sweat, but of earth and turned soil. A child's cry echoes through an alleyway. Not in pain, just laughter. The baker lights his oven again. The smoke is warm and living. It is over. But you do not feel joy. Not exactly. You feel hollowed, like a bell after it rings. The university posts a notice. Classes will resume in 3 months. Repairs will begin sooner. Surviving scholars are asked to report. You attend the meeting. There are only 9 of you. You remember when the hall seated over 200. The master does not speak of the dead. He only lists the future. Names of donors, stonework to be replaced, lectures to resume. You wonder if he has forgotten. But then you notice his ring is gone. A simple thing. Gold with a red stone. He wore it always. His wife gave it to him. She is not among the 9. You say nothing. You return to the library. The reliquary is to be dismantled. You are given 3 days to make peace with it. You ask Eleanor to help. William joins as well. Each object is placed back into the satchels that once carried food. They are heavier now. You do not cry. But you feel your arms weaken as you carry them to the chapel. The shelves are scrubbed. The charcoal words are erased. But before they are, Eleanor copies them into the back of the final ledger. No death is alone. We remain. Therefore we remember. On the last night, you sit in the cloister with the final ledger open on your lap. You turn to the last page. You write, "The last to die, Agnes Wren, 7 months old. Found by well, buried beneath elder tree, July 29. You let the ink dry in silence. The next morning, the ledger is closed. And your role, whatever it was, ends. Years pass. The university thrives. Its walls shine. New stone replaces the blackened. The gardens bloom. Laughter returns. No one speaks of the sweating sickness now. Not in lectures, not in song, not in prayer. But you do. In your way. Each morning, you still walk the city alone. You leave a pebble by the elder tree. A sprig of thyme on the steps of St. Mary's. A feather by the chapel door. No one notices. But that's not the point. One day, a child asks you why you do it. You do not answer directly. You hand her a stone. Smooth, heavy, quiet. She takes it and leaves it at the base of the tower. The next day, there are 2 stones. Then 3. Memory, you realize, is a contagion too, but one that saves. You visit the archives once a year. The ledgers still rest on their shelves. Faded now. their spines cracked, but intact. You open the final page again. Agnes Wren. You place your hand on her name and say nothing, because remembering is its own kind of prayer. The city has changed, but your steps do not. You still walk Magdalen Lane, still pause at the gate where the comb was found, still trace your fingers along the stone where the Psalter page once lay. You do not need the items anymore. You remember them. One night, in the deepest hour, a storm rolls in. The thunder wakes you. You rise and step into the rain. It is cold, cleansing. You walk to the chapel, and for the first time in many years, you ring the bell. Once, it echoes long into the dark, and somewhere beyond the walls, in the hush that follows, you imagine they hear it too. All of them. The vanished, the remembered, the never named. You are not a tourist in time. You are a witness. And now so are they. Centuries will pass. Scholars will argue about the sweating sickness its cause, its cure, its silence. Some will say it was a hantavirus. Others will insist it was a cousin of influenza. None will be certain. None will agree. The records are too fragmented, the bodies too long buried, the questions too many. But you do not need to solve it. Because you were there. You held the ledger, you gathered the relics, you traced the breath of a city as it vanished, and then dared to inhale again. You saw how grief reshaped silence, how memory clung to linen and stone, how a single name, Agnes Wren, could carry the weight of 200,000 more. You remember, not for the sake of history, but for the sake of humanity. And perhaps that is enough. Some say plague is the great eraser, leveling kings and beggars alike, removing names, faces, entire cities from the maps. But perhaps, in remembering, you place those names back on the page. Not in ink, but in something quieter. Something harder to destroy. A thought before sleep. A breath before dawn. A whisper in the dark. I was there. I still remember. And now, you listening to this, you remember too. And that is enough to keep them from vanishing forever.